let's move on to Howard Stern. So Howard Stern did a skit. This is dating all the way back to 1993. And now he's under scrutiny. And the reason why is because he wore blackface and he used the N-word, extensively using the N-word, according to Forbes. The skit was based on a performance that took place, as I said, in the early 90s, the Friars Club roast of Whoopi Goldberg, acted out by former Cheers star Ted Danson, during which Danson wore blackface and extensively used the N-word as well. Now, how and why this is coming out now, I don't know, but we're going to comment on it. But I want you to listen to a little part of it first. This is Howard Stern from a skit back in 1993. Have a listen to this.
Besides, Whoopi done wrote everything I'm going to say here tonight, so it's all right. Ain't that right, you smelling?
I didn't write that.
Well, you is a smelling. I got some more jokes for your New Year's Eve party there.
You're not tired of this.
And don't be racially offended, because Whoopi done wrote them for me, okay? Here we go.
Go ahead.
Black hole.
Black hole.
You're going to love this. Hello there. What do I loves most about the Whoopi? Yeah.
That was great timing.
Hey, Robin, what does you call a black rocket scientist?
I don't know, Ted.
Whoopi wrote it. Whoopi wrote it.
Okay, so I don't even know where to start with that piece of audio. That is unbelievable.
As you may know, Whoopi and Ted Danson used to date.
Yes. All right, so here I grew up listening to Howard Stern my whole life. I've never heard this skit before, to be honest. I've never heard it. And I want to bring Rush Limbaugh into this equation. And I want to explain the differences. Now, I don't support anybody, whether it's a comedian or a radio host that I've looked up to my whole life. I don't support anybody using the N-word in any way. I don't agree with it. I think it's wrong. Blackface is a different circumstance. I think it depends on the context of how you're using it. Obviously, there's a lot of people that would be very offended by what Howard Stern did in that skit. I want to bring Rush Limbaugh into this equation. Rush Limbaugh has said some pretty racially insensitive things, but here's the big distinction and difference between Howard Stern and Rush Limbaugh. Howard Stern is the king of I guess you could say Howard Stern is the king of self-deprecation. Howard Stern makes fun of himself every day on his show. He makes fun of his penis size. He makes fun of his looks. He makes fun of his his everything, his nose, his penis size, his family, his friends, his parents. The guy makes fun of everybody, including himself. He is an equal opportunity offender. Now, with that being said, do I think it's okay to use the N-word? No. Do I think in the context of using the blackface there, should he have done it? Probably not. However, Rush Limbaugh has never made fun of himself. Rush Limbaugh is not a self-deprecator. Rush Limbaugh attacks minorities on a regular basis. And by the way, I don't believe Rush Limbaugh does it to be funny. For example, he was fired from ESPN for his racially insensitive comments about black quarterbacks, particularly in that instance, Donovan McNabb. He has a history of losing jobs because I believe he's a racist. And I want you to take a listen to this audio. This is what Rush Limbaugh played on his show in regards to the President of the United States, not his co-host, like Howard talking about Robin Quivers. Take a listen to this.
Barack, the magic Negro, lives in D.C. The L.A. Times, they call him that cause he's not authentic like me. Yeah, the guy from the L.A. paper said he make guilty whites feel good. They'll vote for him and not for me cause he's not from the hood.
Again, keep in mind, Rush Limbaugh has a history of making racist comments, racially insensitive comments, misogynistic comments, not to be funny, because that's who he is. It's an easy distinction to make, I believe. That was a poor attempt at Howard Stern trying to be funny in using the N-word and wearing blackface, and he was wrong.
How was that not the same for Rush? Isn't Rush's producer African American?
I just explained.
He is. Yeah, but no, I understand. But
Mr. Snerdley,
you're saying Howard Stern did this, but Rush Limbaugh got to point the finger over there at Rush Limbaugh.
I will repeat what I just said, and please understand.
No, I understand exactly.
Okay.
No, you're trying to
Rush,
justify what Howard Stern. I would actually
I'm not
argue.
justifying
I would argue what Howard Stern did was worse because he actually used the N-word.
I completely disagree.
Rush Limbaugh did
and
not
here's
use
why.
the N-word. The N-word is the one word that you cannot use, and I think that Dave Chappelle shouldn't be able to use it. I think that when a young Caucasian male or woman hears that word and they don't realize how awful it is, and they start to use it, and it relates to violence or some type of conflict, I have a huge issue with that. But Howard Stern actually used the word. He actually dressed up in blackface, Brian.
Okay, so
Rush Limbaugh obviously has he made some racially questionable remarks? Of course. And his demographic clearly enjoyed, or he has specific material predicated on race because his demographic is that type of demographic that would enjoy that material. But Howard Stern actually used the N-word and dressed up in blackface.
I want to give out the number at 702-257-5396. Again, the number 257-5396. Once again, what you just said is wrong.
How is that wrong?
If you let me explain, you just said I was defending Howard Stern. If you actually listen to my words and what I just said, I was actually doing the opposite of that. I don't know why you say things that are not true. I literally 5 minutes ago, did I not? I went on the air 5 minutes ago, and I just said, and I will repeat it again for you because you didn't hear me.
No, you're trying to say that what Rush did was worse.
Stop putting words in my mouth. Let me talk. What I'm saying is this: what Howard Stern did was wrong. I said it 5 minutes ago that the N-word shouldn't be used at any time. That is the opposite of what you just said. Stop putting words in my mouth. That's not what I said. I am not defending Howard Stern. By the way, Howard is the reason why I got into radio. I'm not defending Howard Stern.
I understand that.
Okay, hold on.
No.
I'm not defending him. I am simply saying what he did was wrong. He should never use the N-word. As I said, nobody should ever use the N-word.
Which I agree with
I also
entirely.
said
And I think nobody of any race should use the N-word.
Here's the distinction that I will say again, and then we'll take some calls, between Howard Stern and Rush Limbaugh. Rush Limbaugh was fired from ESPN for making racist remarks, okay? Howard has never been fired from a job for making racially insensitive remarks. Number two, Howard Stern is into self-deprecation. Rush Limbaugh has never made fun of himself, and trust me, there's a lot of things you can make fun of when it comes to Rush Limbaugh. He never does that. He goes on the attack, not to be funny. He doesn't go after minorities to be funny.
He's an entertainer, Brian.
Okay, he doesn't go after...
You can't say he's not an entertainer.
If you think
he's
he goes
clearly
after...
an entertainer.
All right, so you think it was entertaining for Rush Limbaugh, when he goes after immigrants and the nasty things he said about minorities his entire career? I can't find anything that's funny to me.
No, the issue here, Brian, is that you are trying to justify why it's okay for Howard Stern to do that.
Never justified it. Once again, you're wrong.
But you're saying
Just
that you are though.
wrong.
You're mentioning Rush Limbaugh because you're saying Rush actually is racist. Howard Stern isn't racist.
I don't believe Howard's racist.
That's what you're trying to say.
I don't believe
so you're
Howard's
trying to
racist.
say it's okay that Howard did what he did, by dropping 5 to 10 N-bombs and dressing in blackface because he's not really racist.
Never.
No, that's what you're doing, Brian.
Well,
you are doing that.
Your mind is not working properly.
I promise you, my mind is on full cylinder right now. That is not my issue.
I don't think it is.
I can assure you of that.
Okay.
And I believe that you are mistaken when you say that.
Okay.
But that's what you're doing.
Okay.
You're taking what Howard did and you're pointing
right.
the finger to Rush Limbaugh and you're saying, but Rush Limbaugh, he did this. But Rush has never used the N-word and he has never dressed in blackface. Mm-hmm. If Rush Limbaugh used the N-word and dressed in blackface, and honestly, I think Laura Ingraham is more racist than both of them put together. I think Laura Ingraham is incredibly racist. I mean, what she did with LeBron James telling him to shut up and dribble and then not calling out Drew Brees and saying, hey, you're an athlete, shut up. If that's the case, you can't be preferential on that. Just same thing with Nipsey Hussle and Kobe Bryant, not even mentioning those situations. That's a big deal. Mm-hmm. But Howard Stern really effed up pretty bad here, Brian. And now, is Rush Limbaugh, is he racist? You don't really know, but you know he's an entertainer.
He was fired from ESPN for being racist.
You can't say that Howard Stern is an entertainer and Rush Limbaugh isn't. That's what I'm saying.
Let's go to the phone calls. And by the way, Rush Limbaugh was fired for being a racist. Howard Stern's never lost a job for being a racist. In fact, nobody that's ever worked with Howard Stern has accused him of that. People have accused Rush Limbaugh of that. 702-257-5396 is the number to call. What do you guys think about this? Let's go to Kurt. Kurt, you're first up. What's going on?
Hey, what's up, Kurt?
Hey, thanks for having me. Just quick, on topic, but not necessarily these two gentlemen. I just feel like there's so much race baiting, and I feel like it's more recent. We're bringing up stuff from the past, and it's like, why are we doing this? Like, not you guys in particular, because you have your talking points that you agree to, and there's no problem with that. But just in general, Like, where is this coming down from? It seems to be race bait everywhere. Like, CNN will just jump on anything race bait.
Well, I'll respond to that, and I'll give you the best and most honest answer that I can, Kurt, and that is race is ratings and race is money. I'm going to bring up the Trayvon Martin case because they tried to paint out George Zimmerman to be white. It was supposed to be white versus black. George Zimmerman is not even white. But the reason why the media covered it the way it was because when you cover racial issues, white versus black, it equals ratings, and ratings equal money. I mean, that's the best answer I could give you and the most honest one.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of truth to that, but it's just more recently though.
There's a lot of political pandering going on right now. There's the thought process that the 13% of the United States is African American, and if African Americans will vote in bigger numbers against Donald Trump, then the chance of Joe Biden winning will take place. There's a lot of that taking place. Otherwise, we wouldn't have seen Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer dress up in kente cloth and kneel for 8 minutes and 45 seconds to recreate the George Floyd situation.
That was a big joke.
I would also say big pandering, and pandering would be when Donald Trump clears out a bunch of protesters, or Barr does, and then holds up a Bible for 20 seconds.
That's
also pandering to his base.
You're pointing a finger. I'm saying in relation to this, Donald Trump has done nothing to pander. In fact, Donald Trump has done nothing to pander? Not to African Americans. He hasn't. No, to African Americans he has. We're talking about pandering to African Americans specifically here. You're flipping the script to get Trump involved.
So let me ask
Bottom line, but Trump did, and we haven't mentioned this.
Well, you're wrong.
But
said.
He did change the date from June 19th to Juneteenth to June 20th
wow,
because
what a great guy.
No, that was
what
actually. If
guy.
you look at that tweet, that was probably his most supportive tweet for African Americans he's ever had. But he did that because, and he stated this specifically, he had advisors and friends that reminded him how important that day. And honestly, I think that he may declare Juneteenth a federal holiday.
Okay,
and if that happens, that's a big deal. I think that could happen. By the way, 1 million people have bought tickets or have signed up to go to that rally. It's a venue of 20,000. That's 50 times size the capacity of the venue. There's a lot of love for Donald Trump in the United States right now.
That has nothing to do with pandering. And by the way, that was pandering. He was pandering to his idiotic base when he held up a Bible for 20 seconds, something that he's never read before. He never opened up the book. And I will also add a few other things to what you just said. Speaking of pandering, when he talked about the jobs report, the day the jobs report came up, and in that speech or the statements that he made, he injected George Floyd into that statement. He said George Floyd is looking up from above, and he'd be very happy. So don't tell me that he's not pandering. He's absolutely pandered to African Americans before, and he'll do it again. 702-257-5396 is the number to call if you want to be a part of the program. Let's go to Carl. Carl, you're next on the Vegas Take.
What's up, Carl?
Yeah, it's an honor to finally get through to you again. I haven't. It's been a long time. Listen, do either of you think? Well, I know you, Brian. You do think that Trump's a racist, but JD, do you think he is?
No, I don't.
You don't. Okay.
I do not. I will tell you this, Carl. Had he not moved Juneteenth, or had he done that, because Juneteenth is a huge day, obviously, as far as racial relations. Had he not. Or had he done that event, and had he not specifically mentioned how important racial relations are in the United States, and had that been kind of a Trump rally on Juneteenth,
Can I add something to that?
I would have questioned his racial intentions. But I do not believe he's a racist.
Carl, hang on for 1 second, Carl. I want to make a point to what JD just said, which I completely disagree with once again. The idea that Donald Trump was the one who said, "Gosh, guys, we can't have this on the 19th. We got to move it to the 20th," is absurd. There are people within his administration that advised him. These are sources that have said that they advised him not to do it. And when Donald Trump was interviewed by Fox News by an African American,
Harris Faulkner,
yes, she asked him about this. And in that interview, if he truly thought it was a bad day to do it, and it was him, he would have said it in that interview. But guess what? He didn't. They waited until 48 hours later, and I guarantee you that there were people within Trump's administration that told him that it was a bad idea.
And he actually said that. I actually talked about that 3 minutes ago. He said in that tweet, after conversations with my African-American friends and advisors, I moved it. What I'm saying, now you're flipping the script, Brian. What I'm saying, yes, he
didn't do it.
You're not understanding what I'm saying.
Your
brain isn't working.
Honestly,
Brian. Your brain's not working.
Honestly, I don't understand what you say every segment.
On the night,
you're absolutely right. We agree.
Had that event taken place on the 19th, and sorry, Carl, give me 1 second. Had that event,
Carl's still on hold.
Yeah, had that he's not on hold.
Sounds like he's in a box.
Had that event taken place on the 19th, and had he made it a Trump rally and not mentioned how important it is to African Americans and what kind of an issue we're having right now with racial relations in the United States, then I would question his racial intentions. That's what I'm
sorry,
saying.
Carl.
Brian,
all right.
you've misunderstood
All right.
me.
Well, sorry, Carl. I mean, let me just. I don't.
You're ready
speak-
to go, Carl.
I mean, Trump is just a wonderful human being. All right, go ahead, Carl.
Can I just say one thing?
Please.
Absolutely.
Be saying that I'm the least racist person in the world. Well, obviously that's a lie right there.
I would
But
agree with that.
Let me explain something to you. When a child is born and raised, he generally takes on the ideals of his parents. But by the time he reaches the age of 16 years old, he's finally gotten all their thoughts and all their reasons, and they take the attitudes of their parents. Trump's father was a member of the KKK. He was arrested at a Ku Klux Klan rally in New York for causing a disturbance. I saw the arrest reports on the actual copies of the arrest reports, and he was fined for not renting to black people. So his father, you get these thoughts; they come down to you. They're ingrained in your personality and your being. By the time you reach the age of around 16, Trump was raised in that, and he never got away from it.
I agree. I think your upbringing has a lot to do with your behavior, Carl. I'm sure you would agree with that. Trump comes from a racist family. You mentioned his father, who was a member of the KKK. Listen, I couldn't agree with you more. And the idea that Donald Trump has any empathy or understanding in his body when you have a black woman, a successful black woman, who's interviewing him and telling him, sir, you shouldn't have this on this date on the 19th.
Supposed to break down and cry, Brian.
No.
Does that
that's
mean
that's a ridiculous thing to say.
When you say Trump doesn't have empathy,
Again,
it's almost like you want him just break down and cry. Just
you're right.
kneel.
Trump has a lot of empathy.
Just
You're right.
apologize. Just apologize for being wealthy and white. Is that what you want him to do, Brian?
Well, again, another idiotic thing that you just said. You're taking it to a ridiculous.
Actually, I'm not.
Okay,
You are.
well, if I could, no.
You're
if I could
saying,
just comment.
You're saying he has no empathy because he doesn't meet the expectation for what you want him to do to have empathy.
Excuse me. First of all, you want to talk about empathy. Well, here's an example. When John McCain dies, it's probably best if you don't take credit for the funeral. It's probably best if you just talk about the man that he was and how he'll be sorely missed. Don't take credit. Oh, I should have gotten credit from the family about a funeral. When a man like George Floyd dies, Joe Biden flies out with his wife to see the family. They spend an hour and a half together. That's called empathy. Donald Trump made a 5-minute – hold on. Donald Trump made a 5-minute phone call. Now, you want to take it to
you just accused Donald Trump
if you could
of pandering for mentioning George Floyd in a tweet.
If you could let me finish. Thank you. The bottom line here is this. Donald Trump doesn't have empathy. I don't need him to break down and cry every 5 seconds. But I think what we need from a president is understanding and empathy. Now, the idea that an African
I think you want our president to be a soy boy.
Well, you're being ridiculous once again. You're saying idiotic things, but I'm used to it by now. So it's one ear and out the other.
Wait, idiotic things?
Yeah, that's an idiotic thing to say. Yes, and to say that I want to be Donald Trump when the man is a blatant racist and a
He's
jerk.
not a blatant racist.
Yes,
Brian.
he is.
No, he is not.
Okay, well, let's just ask his dead father, the former Klan member. But going back to empathy and going back to feeling sorrow for others. You don't hold a coronavirus press conference and talk about your ratings. You don't talk about the election and not talk about all the people that we've lost. And you don't have a 5-minute conversation with the Floyd family and talk for 4.5 minutes. That's what the family said he did. But look.
Had he done that, you would have accused him of pandering, Brian. You just said that. You accused him of pandering for mentioning Floyd in a tweet.
Again,
and by the way, the reason he was not at the funeral, he was not invited. Had he been invited, I'm sure
talking about John McCain, or are you talking about George Floyd?
I'm talking about George Floyd. Okay. And when you're not invited to a funeral, why would you want to meet up with the family if they don't want you at the funeral in the first place?
So let me address that ridiculous comment you just made, because it took them over a week to bury the man. In that week's time, Donald Trump would have had the opportunity, like Joe Biden did, by the way, to fly out and see the family. He chose not to. Instead, he made a 5-minute phone call. So your excuse that he wasn't invited to the funeral doesn't make any sense, and it's absurd. It doesn't make any sense.
Okay,
now,
when he's not invited to a funeral, why would he think, oh, okay, they must want me to come and talk to them in person?
That is not, again, you're not listening to me.
Doesn't make sense.
I'll repeat myself again because you're not understanding. He had over a week to meet with the family before the funeral. What part of that do you not understand? Now, after the 5-minute conversation he had with the Floyd family, I don't blame the Floyd family for not wanting to see him at the funeral.
Wait, didn't Biden meet up with the family after his first funeral? What didn't he meet? Wasn't that after the the major funeral in Minneapolis? Didn't he meet him in Houston?
So here's the thing. He wasn't.
Right? Or
he wasn't
where did he meet them up
He
with?
met them in Houston.
Okay.
George Floyd was not buried yet. That's number one. Number two, Donald Trump had already had a 5-minute conversation with the family. Now, I think, and this is just maybe my personal opinion because I have empathy for people, but I think if you're the commander and the chief and the president and the leader of the free world, you should probably give the family a little more than 5 minutes of your time. I don't think that's asking too much.
Right. Would you have met up with the family, considering who George Floyd was as a human being and how he was portrayed?
100%.
You would have?
Because, yes, absolutely.
Okay.
And maybe you wouldn't.
Because
and
I
we
think,
think very
I
differently.
think he was a terrible human being.
Okay, so first of all, we have 30 seconds to go here. But
I think his death is being
we have
leveraged
we have
to
30
divide
seconds.
the country
We have
racially.
to go. We have
and
a
as
break.
An indictment on police officers.
We have to go. We're a break. I think it's ridiculous to make the excuse, and it's idiotic to make the excuse that because Donald Trump didn't meet with the family is because of George Floyd's past. That is one of the most ridiculous things I've ever heard.